You can keep your videos on. Some 5-10 minutes. So we'll chant one sutta, one discourse, and then we'll start our Dhamma talk. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. इतिपिसो भगवारहं सम्मा सम्बुद्धो विद्याचरणसम्पन्नो सुगतो लोकवित् अनुत्तरो पुरिसधम्मसारथि सत्तादेवमनुस्नानां बुद्धो भगवाति नमो तस्स सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्सा ये च बुद्धा अतीता च ये च बुद्धा अनागता पच्चुपन्ना च ये बुद्धा अहं वन्दामि सब्बदा नत्थि मे शरणं अन्यं बुद्धो मे शरणं वरं ये तेन सच्चवज्जेन होतु मे जयमङ्गलम् उत्तमङ्गेन वन्देऽहं पादपङ्सु वरुत्तमं बुद्धेयो कलितो दोषो बुद्धमतुतं मम बुद्धं यावनिब्बानपर्यन्तं शरणं गच्छामि स्वाकातो भगवता धम्मो सन्दिटिको अकालिको एहिपस्सिको अपनायको पच्छत्तं वेदितव्यो विन्नुहीति नमो तस्स नियानिक सदम्मसा ये च धम्मा अतीता च ये च धम्मा अनागता पच्चुपन्ना च ये धम्मा अहं वन्दामि सब्बदा नत्थि मे शरणं अन्यं धम्मो मे शरणं वरं ये तेन सच्चवज्जेन होतु मे जयमङ्गलम् उत्तमङ्गेन वन्देऽहं धम्मं च त्रिविधम् उत्तमं धम्मं च त्रिविधं वरं धम्मेयो कलितो दोषो धम्मो कमतुतं मम धम्मं यावनिब्बानपर्यन्तं शरणं गच्छामि सुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावकसङ्गो उजुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावकसङ्गो न्यायपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावकसङ्गो सामीचिपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावकसङ्गो यदिदं चत्तारि पुरुषयुगानि अट्टपुरुषपुग्गला ये सा भगवतो सावकसङ्गो आहुनय्यो पाहुनय्यो दक्किनय्यो अञ्जलिकरणीयो अनुत्तरं पुण्यकेतं लोकस्साति नमो तस्स अट्ट अर्यपुग्गला महासङ्गसा ये च संगा अतीता च ये च संगा अनागता पच्चुपन्ना च ये संगा अहं वन्दामि सब्बदा नत्थि मे शरणं अन्यं संगो मे शरणं वरं ये तेन सच्चवज्जेन होतु मे जयमङ्गलम् उत्तमङ्गेन वन्देऽहं संगं च त्रिविधुत्तमं संगेयो कलितो दोषो संगो कमतुतं मम संगं यावनिब्बानपर्यन्तं शरणं गच्छामि एतेन सच्चवज्जेन सोतिनो होतु सब्बदा एतेन सच्चवज्जेन होतु नो जयमङ्गलम् महाकारुणिको नाथो हिताय सब्बपाणिनां पूरयित्वा पारमी सब्बं पत्तो सम्बोधिमुत्तमं ये तेन सच्चवज्जेन होतु मे जयमङ्गलम् जयन्तो बोधिया मूले सख्यानं नन्दिवर्धनो एवं वयं जयो होतु जयस्सु जयमङ्गलं सकत्वा बुद्धरत्नं ओषधं उत्तमं वरं हितं देवमनुस्सानां बुद्धतेजेन स्वत्तिना न सन्तु पद्दवा सब्बे दुःखा उपासमेन्तु मे सक्कत्वादम्मरतनं ओषधं उत्तमं वरं परिलाहुपशमानां धम्मतेजेन स्वत्तिना न सन्तु पद्दवा सभ्ये भयावुपासमेन्तु मे सक्कत्वा सङ्गरतनं ओषधं उत्तमं वरं आहुनेयं पाहुनेयं सङ्गतेजेन स्वत्तिना न सन्तु पद्दवा सभ्ये रोगावुपासमेन्तु मे यङ्किञ्चिरतनं लोके विद्यति विविधा पुतु Ratanang buddha samang natti tasma sotti bhavantu me. Yankinchi ratanang loke vijjati vividaputu. Ratanang dhamma samang natti tasma sotti bhavantu me. Yankinchi ratanang loke vijjati vividaputu. Ratanang sangha samang natti tasma sotti bhavantu me. Natti me saranang anyang buddho me saranang varang. Yetena saccavajjena hotu me jayamangalang. Natti me saranang anyang dhammo me saranang varang. Yetena saccavajjena hotu me jayamangalang. Natti me saranang anyang sangho me saranang varang. Yetena saccavajjena hotu me jayamangalang. Sabbityo vivajjantu sabbarogo vinasatu. Mate bhavatu antarayo sukhi diga yuko bhava. Bhavatu sabba mangalang rakkantu sabba devata. Sabba buddhanubhavena sabba dhammanubhavena sabba sanghanubhavena sada sotti bhavantu te. Nakkattaya kabhutanang papaggahanvarana. Parittassanubhavena hontu me upaddave. Devo vasatu kalena sassa sampatti hetu cha. Pito bhavatu loko cha raja bhavatu dhammiko. Yam dum nivittam avamangalan chayo cha manapo sakunassa saddo papaggaho dusupinang akantang buddhanubhave vinasamentu. Dhammanubhave vinasamentu. Sanghanubhave vinasamentu. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Vandami Bante, Nama Buddhaya to all.
Okay. So today's chanting is about the qualities of Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Just again, we contemplated the qualities of Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, and then there's one specific discourse, Mahakarmiko, about the compassion of the enlightened one, and the people or the monks or the lay people who follow the enlightened one, and they too become enlightened. So, about the glory, about the compassion. So, we have, say, contemplated the qualities of this enlightenment, qualities of the teaching, qualities of the person, qualities of the group that follows that person. So, in that way, it will develop some kind of inclination, some kind of faith and confidence in this path. So, that is the chanting that we have just concluded. So today I just thought of introducing uh, the importance of the best happiness. Mm. There are different kinds of happiness, as all of us know. The happiness related to the sensual things, related to the body. After all, when we carry this body, we have to have these bodily pleasures also, sensual pleasures also. With that very intention only, we have carried this body. We have got this body. We are carrying this body. So definitely one should have very wholesome, very proper sensual pleasures. That is called, you can say, tansuk, the bodily pleasures. And the next level of pleasure is the mansuk, or the pleasure that will satisfy our very presence, our existence. I usually tell this I-ness and minus in the meditations. After all, when you carry this body with your mind, then definitely some respect, some care, some concern, all these things an individual definitely expects. And that is what is called mansuk. So in the first noble truth, kamatanaha means essential pleasures. The next one is bhavatanaha. Bhavatanaha means like your existence, your presence. One should recognize, one should look into, that is very much there among, of course, in the lay world, among in this world, in this worldly life. One should not completely come out of this attachment unless he becomes an Arya or a noble one. Until then, one has to understand these attachments, these desires, and as much as possible, one has to give work and satisfy or gratify these pleasures or desires. It's not wrong. So that Tansuk and Mansuk, working for, say, name and fame, or say, that is very much there in the world, recognition. But one should understand this. One should not crave for this. By giving what, I get what. With that understanding, one can handle these cravings, one can handle these pleasures, bodily pleasures, and the pleasures of ego or pleasures of personality, pleasures of, say, the self, the so called self. So, after this, the superior happiness, which is more superior than this sensual happiness and this ego happiness, the better happiness and the superior happiness is the samatha sukh, or the happiness that you derive because of the calmness or equanimity or the balance in your mind. So once the mind, say, understands the sensual pleasures, understands the ego pleasures, and once it gets saturated or gratified or contented with this, then it looks for something superior, something more subtle than this physical pleasure and the mental pleasure. And that superior pleasure is very much appreciated, very much promoted by all the teachings of Buddha, because these physical pleasures and the mental pleasures, they are transient, they are temporary, they are ephemeral. They can't really satisfy us. They can't really take us into the better happiness or the more subtle happiness. So just like children, just like kids, the kids, they like to have all the sensual happiness. We just satisfy all their sensual happiness. Then they want to say, they want, say, love, they want concern, they want care, they want recognition. Then we try to satisfy all their that mental requirements, or that attachment to inus and minus, the pleasures based on that highness and minus. We try to satisfy the kids, the child's, this pleasure, this craving also. And afterwards, we try to make him more responsible to work for his own, say, life, to make him to stand on his own legs, and to derive superior happiness. So we will try to make him, say, establish in the life with some profession, with career, with profession. In the same way, for this mind, which initially wants a lot of sensual pleasures, the gross mind, when it becomes little subtler, it wants this recognition, and then when that recognition is the need of the individual, then he starts working, he starts giving. Then after reaching some level, then he tries to balance his mind. He tries to work on the spiritual happiness. But if this is very much taught in the beginning stage of the life itself, all these three kinds of pleasures and how to work on these three kinds of pleasures, then definitely that individual becomes a very mature, very successful individual. So today's discussion is on this third level of happiness, that is samatha sukh, the happiness that one can derive through this equanimity, keeping the mind balanced, keeping the mind, say, uh, equanimous. So we we are learning in our different meditation courses, different levels. So the different wholesome feelings, metta, karuna, mudita, and upekka. So in this metta, karuna, mudita, we are trying to make our mind more wholesome, not becoming too sensuous, not becoming too selfish, just to wish the happiness for all beings, that is metta and karuna, just to wish let all beings, may all beings come out of suffering. So that wish we develop, not only me, all other beings also, we just start expanding ourselves in this metta and karuna and start wishing other beings, other animals, other humans, known people, unknown people also, respectable ones, friends, relatives, family members. We start expanding the same thing, but we start wishing for them also. Whatever we want, the same thing is required for them also, with that understanding. Our selfishness, our attachment to our sensual pleasures, our ego pleasures, we start expanding it, spreading it, distributing it, sharing it with other people also, other beings also. But still, the mind will not be so perfectly balanced. But of course, step by step, the mind starts getting balanced. In metta, lot of our selfish ideas, lot of our suffering which arises because of this too much selfishness, that will start decreasing. The same way, when the compassion is developed, the mind becomes little more subtler, little more superior, little more calmer, little more balanced. And when you start appreciating others' happiness, start sharing others' happiness, the mind becomes more refined, more pure. The deep rooted jealousy and the deep rooted enviousness, it can be fixed slowly. And still, if you develop your mind with regard to the wholesome feelings, if you practice this upekka, understanding this law of cause and effect, and remain equanimous when you are praised, when you are blamed, understanding that it's all changing, it's all because of the game of these defilements of the mind of all these individuals. I should not be carried away with these defilements. I should try to fix these defilements by keeping myself calm, by keeping myself more responsible for my goals and objectives in the life. On this kind of attitude, if you keep on developing, then your mind becomes more equanimous. Hmm? And that equanimity, that calmness that you maintain in your mind without being carried away, without being affected by your own defilements, your own greed, your own hatred, your own, say, ignorance, dullness, laziness, then the mind becomes more like one, say, one lake, which is not, say, affected by the rising waves, because of the wind. When the waves rise, then it gets perturbed, it gets disturbed. Then you can't see what is there in the bottom of the lake. So then you can't, say, uh, find out the beauty of the lake. You can't see the beauty of the water. You can't see the, say, the freshness or the cleanliness of the water. The same way, if you calm down your mind without any waves in the mind because of your own greed, your own hatred, and your own delusion, then you can see, you can start knowing about your mind. So what is there inside the mind? And from there, you start getting the inner happiness also, which is very, very subtler, which is very, very superior, far, far superior than your sensual pleasures and your ego pleasures. So that's what Buddha highlights in many, many discourses. So one of the discourse we will see what Buddha talks about regarding this happiness of equanimity, and how and why it is so important as you keep on growing in your quest of happiness, search of happiness. Then one should end up in this superior happiness, which comes because of calming down the mind, balancing the mind, uh, keeping the mind, the mental faculties in the equanimous state. How the true happiness, how the real happiness we can find out, we can discover. And because of that unperturbed, undisturbed, calm, superior happiness, how it will have an impact on the health also, your work efficiency, your skillfulness, how everything will be increased. So indirectly, all this message is there in many of the discourses given by Buddha. So today I have selected one discourse. So we'll see this discourse for some 5 minutes. And then we take up one verse from the Dhammapada. So this discourse is in Majjhima Nikaya, 21st discourse in Majjhima Nikaya. And here Buddha addresses to a group of people, the monks, and he says, there are these 5 courses of speech that others may use when they address you. Their speech may be timely or untimely, true or untrue, gentle or harsh, connected with good or with harm, spoken with a mind of loving kindness or with inner hate. These are the dichotomies, ups and downs, or the opposites that always we come across when we interact with the people. So most of the time we interact with the people by communicating, by talking to them. So in that communication, we may come across the people talking to us timely or untimely. Some nonsense which is not suitable at the present moment, they may talk, or very suitable thing, very timely uh, aspects they may discuss, they may talk, or true or untrue. Sometimes they may interact with you, they may converse with you with truth, or sometimes without truth or untruth. Sometimes they speak to you in a gentle way, sometimes they may speak to you in a harsh way. Sometimes it may be connected with the good, sometimes it may be connected with the harming you. Sometimes they speak with a mind of loving kindness. Sometimes they speak with inner hate, inner jealousy, or inner hate. In all these circumstances, when others address you, their speech may be timely or untimely. When others address you, their speech may be true or untrue. When others address you, their speech may be gentle or harsh. When others address you, their speech may be connected with good or with harm. When others address you, their speech may be spoken with a mind of loving kindness or with inner hate. Here in monks, you should try thus. Our minds will remain unaffected, and we shall utter no evil words. We shall abide compassionate for their welfare with a mind of loving kindness without inner hate. We shall abide pervading that person with a mind imbued with loving kindness. And starting with him, we shall abide pervading the all encompassing world with a mind imbued with loving kindness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. That is how you should try. So that's what you learn in this Brahma Vihara meditations, Metta, Karuna, Mudita, Upekka. So whatever may be the reaction from the other person, from deep within, you have to cultivate this Metta, Karuna, Mudita, Upekka. That forgiving, that letting go, it should be an integral part of our personality. Some people may prize, some people may have some bad intentions, good intentions, but still not being perturbed by the external, impulses. You should not be very reactive to the external impulses. You should respond with equanimity. You should respond with calmness. You should respond with the balance of mind. Then only you can control your mind. So first, all these 4 wholesome feelings, metta, karuna, mudita, upekka, if you correctly understand them and practice them, then the loving kindness that you show to the person next to you, that will become a beginning point to show loving kindness to all the beings, irrespective of whatever is their background. So that is the reason why we should learn to give loving kindness to the person who is next to me, whether he is good or bad, whether he is talking to me with harsh speech or with gentle speech, with wrong intents or right intents. But our reaction should be always positive, always wholesome, always with these 4 wholesome feelings only. Then nobody can disturb us. No force on this earth will affect us. And that kind of unaffectedness in the mind is what is samatha, what is upekka. So by practicing metta, karuna, mudita correctly, and then if you practice mudita, then you can establish that kind of firm mind, that kind of stable mind, At the same time, that kind of sensitive and very skillful mind you can definitely establish. So Buddha is insisting, he is actually emphasizing of that kind of superior mind which is unperturbed by the external environment, whatever it is, whether it is pricing also. Don't be carried away with that price. Don't be excited with the price, because that very excitement of the mind is uncontrolledness. Again, if somebody teases you or blames you, again it will fall into depression. This praise and blame, or this excitement and falling down, or depression or disappointment, they always go together. If you yield yourself to excitement, then you definitely yield to the disappointment also. So that is the problem of this being excited if somebody prizes you. So don't be carried away in this excitement. If you learn how not to be carried away in the excitement, then definitely you can you cannot be affected by blame, or you can't fall into disappointment. You can remain equanimous, and that equanimous mind is the most strongest mind, and it is the most skillful mind, most intelligent mind, most peaceful and most happy mind also. That is the point here Buddha is highlighting. So maintain that kind of mind, which is not perturbed by either excitement or disappointment from the outside impulses. So he gives one simile. Suppose a man came with a hoe and a basket and said, I shall make this great earth to be without earth. He would dig here and there, strew the soil here and there, spit here and there, and urinate here and there, saying, be without earth, be without earth. What do you think, monks? Could that man make this great earth to be without earth? No, Bante. Why is that? Because this great earth is deep and immense. It is not easy to make it be without earth. Eventually, the man would reap only weariness and disappointment. So, your behavior, your reaction to this, the worldly ups and downs, worldly praise and blame, is something like that of an earth, that of the earth. Some people, if they come and if they think that they can destroy the earth by digging here and there, they end up in weariness. They can't do that. So that should be your mental makeup. You should not be affected by these dichotomies, these vicissitudes of the external environment, the ups and downs, the opposite impulses that you get from the world, prizing and blaming, too much happiness or too much suffering that is induced by the external world. One should not react to it. One should not be carried away by that. One should be equanimous. So that kind of equanimous mind is like earth. So earth, whatever you do on the earth, so it will tolerate, it will have tremendous patience, it will not be affected by somebody spits on the earth, somebody urinates, somebody pollutes the earth, somebody grows beautiful flowers, somebody grows trees here. For everything, earth is okay. Earth tolerates, earth bears all these things. In the same way, the mind should be so stable, so strong, so equanimous. Then such an individual, the mind, the quality of the mind which is stable, which is equanimous. So such kind of mind only can progress both in the worldly achievements, both in the worldly life, and also in the spiritual life. And more than that, that kind of mind will derive the true happiness. That is samatha sukh. So what I call it as samatha sukh, the happiness that one can derive with that equanimity, that is the superior happiness. If you want to derive that, you have to train your mind with this kind of equanimity. So that is what is the simile given by Buddha. Our minds will remain unaffected and we shall utter no evil words. We shall abide compassionate for their welfare with a mind of loving kindness, without inner hate. We shall abide pervading that person with a mind imbued with loving kindness. And starting with him, we shall abide pervading the all encompassing world with a mind similar to the earth. abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. If you learn how to give even to your enemy or the person who is say talking to you with ill will, with harsh speech, abusing you, if you learn how to give loving kindness to that person, then it becomes very easy for you to give loving kindness to the whole existence, towards all beings. And once you learn that kind of loving kindness, how to give loving kindness to all beings, all the life, then you are immovable, you are not shakable, you are unshakable. No force on this earth will disturb you, will perturb you, and that kind of stable mind one should achieve, one should work for that. So, all our meditation techniques, the wholesome feelings, and also awareness meditations, step by step, drop by drop, it will establish this stability in the mind, it will establish this equanimity in the mind. All the meditations, all the teachings of Buddha, the final objective is this equanimity only. All the arhants achieve this enlightenment if and only if they achieve this equanimity. All the people, successful people, they achieve success even in the world if and only if they achieve this equanimity of the mind, not being perturbed by the world, the impulses or the reactions from the world. If you are not perturbed by strengthening your mind, not being carried away by the worldly responses, then such a person only can achieve success in meditation, achieve success in the worldly life also. So all the training that in different levels or in these teachings is for this achievement only, for achieving the stability in the mind, for achieving this samatha in the mind, thereby to get samatha sukh and also the success. All kinds of success are rooted or based on this mind full of equanimity, full of stability. So that is the point that I wanted to highlight in this short Dhamma talk. So understand this and work on this. That will definitely take you towards the best happiness, the best success in both the worldly life and also in the spiritual life, in the meditation. So sooner or later, we will definitely achieve it. Be have patience, step by step, drop by drop, cultivate this equanimity through different meditations. Then definitely you will be successful. So that is about the importance of this equanimity of the mind. Now we will take up the second verse in Dhammapada, that is continuation of the last week's first verse about how the bad consequences will follow with bad mind and bad actions. With bad mind and bad actions, definitely the bad consequences one has to face. He can't escape from that. So that is the summary of the first verse that we discussed last week. Mano pubbangama dhamma mano siddha manomaya manasache paduttena basativa karotiva tatonang dukkamanveti chakkang va vahata padam. With paduttena manasa, with bad mind, with corrupted mind, with defiled mind, whatever actions you do, physical actions, mental actions, verbal actions, then definitely you end up in suffering. No force on this earth, no gods, no leaders, no say deities. Nobody can rescue you if you indulge in bad actions based on bad mind. You have to say partake the fruits of your bad actions, which is nothing but suffering. You have to end up in suffering with your bad mind and bad actions. So that's what is the first Gata or the first verse. It is just like the wheel follows the hoof of the drought ox or the bullocks in a bullock cart. Just like the wheel follows the hoof of the bullock, the same way suffering follows a bad mind and the actions based on bad mind. So that's what we discussed last week, and today, as the continuation of that, The same way, the good mind also. If you perform, if you do anything with good mind, so good mind leads to good actions, physical actions, mental actions, and verbal actions. Once you take up these good actions, wholesome actions, then sukhamanveti, then the sukha will follow you. And more authoritatively, where Buddha says, chayava anapayini. Chayava anapayini means, chaya means shadow. Just like your shadow will always follow you, the happiness will always follow the good actions. No force on this earth will stop you to enjoy happiness if you indulge in good actions based on good mind. If you have good mind, and based on that good mind, if you take up good actions, then no force on this earth will stop you to get the consequences of that good actions, that is happiness only. So here the four noble truths, the essence of four noble truths is there that we can understand here. As I used to say in the meditation classes in the first level itself, with craving and with bad mind, if you take up any action, then you end up in suffering. With good mind, with wholesome mind, if you take up any action, then you end up in happiness. In the same way, these two verses are given here in this Dhammapada. Manopubbangama Dhamma, Manosetta Manomaya, Manasache Pasandena. Pasandena means like wholesome mind. Basativa Karotiva, good mind. With equanimous mind. Pasanna means like, so it's equanimous, wholesome mind. So here also the equanimity will come into picture. When your mind is equanimous, then only your mind become wholesome. Then only your mind can understand what is right, what is wrong, what is wholesome action, what is unwholesome action. That kind of pasanna, that kind of equanimity one should achieve in the mind. Based on that equanimity, if you perform your actions, then what happens? Either it is basativa, karotiva. Basativa means like verbal action, your speech. Karotiva means like your physical action. So based on this equanimous mind, based on this wholesome mind, if you perform any verbal actions and physical actions, then tatonam sukhaman, because of that you get happiness. Happiness will follow you. Chayava anapayini. Just like the shadow follows you. Shadow will not leave you. Just like that, the happiness follow you. If you perform many actions based on the wholesome, equanimous mind. So what is the background story? There was one young Brahmin by name Matta Kundali, whose father was very stingy and never gave anything in charity. That Matta Kundali's father, he was a stingy man, though he was quite rich. He was not generous. He was not giving any charity to anybody. Even the gold ornaments for his only son were made by himself to save payment for workmanship. So he used to make some gold ornaments for his son. That is this Matta Kundali. Matta means, that is the meaning actually. The very name he got because of his father's say action. So his father, he prepared some gold ornaments. Kundali means the ornaments of the ear. Hmm. Matta means like he only beaten up that gold ornament and he only prepared that. So he only made that and he gave that earrings to his son just to save the uh, payment for workmanship, payment for this goldsmiths. Just to save that payment for the goldsmith, he only prepared that golden rings, earrings, and gave it to his son. When his son was suffering from jaundice, no physician was consulted until it was too late. So he became sick because of jaundice and he could not bring any physician, his father, again thinking that why should I give payment for the physician? So because of that stinginess, what happened? It became too late when he realized that his son was dying. He had the youth carried outside to the veranda so that people coming to his house would not see his possessions. He became so stingy that he carried his son, the sick son, the bedridden son, outside in the veranda, so that when people come, they can see his son from the veranda itself. They could not enter into the house. When they enter into the house, they can see all his possessions, and they may ask him. So again, he may have to give his possessions to other people, thinking that. So he carried his son to the outside veranda. On that morning, the Buddha, arising early from his deep meditation of compassion, saw in his net of knowledge Matta Kundali lying in the veranda. So every day, early morning, Buddha had this habit of just surveying the world. Who is ready to accept my teachings? Who is having that potential, that receptivity, that readiness to accept my teachings, to receive my teachings, and get realization, get enlightenment? He used to survey the whole world. If some suitable person he can able to see in his survey, then he used to go to him and he used to teach him about this liberation and all, and he used to liberate them. That's what his daily routine, Lord Buddha's. So one particular day he saw this Matta Kundali in his early morning. Mahakaruna Samapatti. That meditation is called Mahakaruna Samapatti. With lot of karuna, he used to survey the whole world. And if he can see somebody who is ready for receiving his teachings, he used to go and give discourse to him. He used to give teachings to him. So when entering Savatthi for alms food with his disciples, the Buddha stood near the door of Matta Kundali's house. So he came to Matta Kundali's house where he was lying outside the house. The Buddha sent forth a ray of light to attract the attention of the youth who was facing the interior of the house. He was facing the interior of the house and he was lying down. Buddha sent his rays, that means that's called Dhammakaya, that means some power, so that he could see Buddha. So with that, say, with that attention, what he did is Matta Kundali, he started looking at Buddha. The youth saw the Buddha. He was very weak and he could only profess his faith, but he thereby gained some happiness. He developed some faith towards Buddha because of his very complexion, because of his very debonair. He developed some inclinations, some faith in Buddha. And because of that, he developed some happiness. But that was enough. That much of piti, that much of happiness, that much of joy by seeing Buddha, that much was enough to accept the teachings from the Buddha. And see, he didn't receive the teachings also. That very joy of seeing Buddha, that much was enough for him, for this Matta Kundali. So after that joy, by looking at Buddha, he passed away with his heart in devotion to the Buddha. He was reborn in the Tavatimsa celestial world. So because of that very appearance, because of that very debonair, because of that compassionate debonair, he became very joyful. He developed that rapture in his body and mind, this Matta Kundali. With that joyful mind, he died and he could take birth in some divine realms. From his celestial abode, he saw his father mourning over him at the cemetery and appeared to the old man in the likeness of his old self. He told his father about his rebirth in the Tavatimsa world and advised him to approach the Buddha, offer alms, and listen to the Buddha's sermon. The old man did as he was told, and after the sermon, the question was brought up as to whether one could be reborn in a celestial world simply by mentally professing profound faith in the Buddha without practicing charity or observing the moral precepts, or without practicing meditation. So the Buddha willed that Matta Kundali should appear in person. Matta Kundali appeared in his celestial glory and told them about his rebirth in Tavatimsa world. Only then did the listeners become convinced that the young man had attained much glory by simply devoting his mind to the Buddha. At the end of the discourse, the old man realized the Dhamma and donated most of his wealth to the cause of the Dhamma. So, just by having that kind of faith, that kind of inclination towards the enlightened one, towards his enlightenment, that much is sufficient to derive the true happiness. Again, that true happiness comes when the mind becomes equanimous, And how that equanimity comes, it comes through meditations, it comes through the wholesome actions like charity, like morality. Not just this charity, morality, and meditations, even by having some faith and confidence in enlightenment, in the enlightened one. That itself is good enough, sufficient enough to calm down the mind, to have equanimity in the mind, and thereby to derive the happiness of equanimity. That is good enough. So at the time of death, that's what he achieved, this Mattakundali. He achieved that happiness of equanimity by looking at this enlightened um, enlightened being. In the enlightened beings are the embodiment of equanimity, the embodiment of the happiness of equanimity. When you just see such enlightened people, then we will also get infected, get induced with that equanimity happiness or happiness of equanimity to some extent. That's what happened in the case of Mattakundali, this young man. So by getting that happiness of equanimity, by looking at Buddha, he died and he could take birth in a joyful or superior world. And then he saw his father who is weeping and crying at the death of his son. He suggested his father again to get this real happiness, not by simply storing the things, the essential things, which will not give you the real happiness, or becoming too I or minus oriented. Just be with the in the company of these enlightened people who are enjoying the true equanimity happiness or inner happiness. So then you will also get that same happiness. That is the superior happiness. In that way, this Mattakundali, he could encourage his father to meet Buddha and to get this happiness of equanimity. And of course, he did according to his son's suggestions. And again, some people showed some kind of doubt whether this is possible. Then Buddha had to invite this Mattakundali from the divine realms, and Mattakundali he himself had to narrate how he got this happiness of equanimity by looking at Buddha, and how he died peacefully, and because of that peaceful death, how he could get a better life. So all these things he could narrate, and after listening to that, many people developed a lot of confidence in this enlightenment, and also uh, the preacher of enlightenment, that is Supreme Buddha, and that very inclination to this happiness of equanimity, which one can achieve through enlightenment, or developing inclination towards the enlightened one and his enlightenment, that is good enough to get that inner happiness. So that is what is called confidence or faith. So that very faith itself is uh, the cause of other practices, other wholesome actions like generosity. So after developing this faith, that old man, this Mattakundali's father, he became very generous. He served the people who are in the search of enlightenment, like Buddha and his Buddha's disciples, so many millions of disciples. So he started serving them by offering all his wealth to the cause of Dhamma, and he became again one great devotee of Buddha, this Mattakundali's father, and he could derive a lot of this inner happiness, the happiness of equanimity, not simply getting indulged in this mental or this eye-based happiness or this sensual happiness. He could transform himself. He could transcend from that inferior happiness to superior happiness. So that is about uh, the power of goodness. So the goodness starts with this very faith itself, very faith in this superior happiness, that is the happiness of equanimity. Once you develop faith in this superior happiness, the happiness of equanimity, that itself is a trigger to practice all other wholesome actions like generosity, like morality, meditations. In all meditations, you achieve that superior happiness. In all morality, moral precepts, non-killing, not stealing, not indulging in sexual misconduct, not lying, not taking intoxicants, you achieve that equanimity, and thereby you achieve the inner happiness, the happiness of equanimity. And also in generosity, not only holding on to the things, just sharing, so that you can again achieve that inner happiness, the happiness of equanimity. And not these three things, even the a preceptor of this, even the beginning of these three things, that is the faith, even in having this faith towards this inner happiness, towards this happiness of equanimity, which is called faith, which is called confidence in this power, that is good enough to get that inner happiness. By listening to this kind of discourses, by seeing the people who have achieved that inner happiness, the happiness of equanimity, we will also get some degree, some amount of so inner happiness. That is the trigger, that is the faith, that is good enough to progress in this path of Dhamma and liberation. So that is today's Dhamma talk on the happiness of equanimity. So in the second Gatha of Dhammapada also that has been highlighted, and also in the Majjhima Nikaya discourse, the importance of this inner happiness, the happiness of equanimity, just like the earth, people spit on the earth, people urinate on the earth, people spoil the earth, people grow beautiful flowers on the earth, whatever it is, but the earth remains equanimous. The same way our mind should remain equanimous, whatever is the price, whatever is the blame from the external world. So to achieve that kind of equanimity, all these practices, faith in that equanimity, faith in the people who are achieving that equanimity, and the different wholesome actions like generosity, morality, meditations, which will lead to this kind of equanimity and the happiness of equanimity. If you cultivate, then definitely you will achieve superior happiness that will protect you from lot of suffering, that will protect you from falling down into inferior happiness. And that is how one should cultivate one's own mind. That's how a human being should live. That is how the Manushya, the person who is Ussati, who is developing his mind, he should live in this manner. So that is today's Dhamma talk. So if you have one or two questions, quick questions, we will see, and then we'll conclude with one small chanting. Just some 3-4 minutes. We will see one or two questions, and then we'll conclude. Yes, Upasakji. Upasak.
Vandami Bhanteji.
Yes, Upasakji.
Bhanteji, you explained development of Upekha very well, the necessity for Upekha. Is it true that one of the ways to develop Upekha is not to react to sensations, whether that also can lead to equanimity development?
Sure, definitely. So not reacting to the sensations, but observe, bear it, whether it is pleasant or unpleasant. But don't react, separate yourself. The same thing with the sounds, good sounds or bad sounds. Observe, note it fully, completely, without having any fear or without having some negligence towards bad sensations or bad sounds. You should accept it, you should receive it. At the same time, you should keep it distance and observe it and not to react to it. Then only the mind becomes sensitive, stable, and truly non-reactive. And that's what we try in all wholesome feelings also, in all awareness meditations also, including the sensations. In the sensations also, the same thing we have to learn and the same thing we do. We observe the sensations, we bear it, we just separate ourselves from its impact on our mind. If it is pleasant, it's okay. Unpleasant, it's okay. That okayness we develop, that very okayness, by observing it, by accepting it, what we develop, that very okayness is equanimity. So definitely we
Vandami
develop
Bhante,
sensation
I am
meditation.
Dr. Yadav.
Yes, Dr.
I am Dr.
Yadav.
Vandami
Yes, Upasak,
Bhante.
Dr. Yadav.
For the last 52 years, I am a
Huh.
medical practitioner. We go on treating the diseases which are there physically in the physical body. At the same time, we go on studying the psychological aspect of the patient. For the last 50 years, in among the patients, instead of developing faith and confidence, patient always goes on fearing. We go on explaining them, but they are unable to understand what could be the reason the powerful reason that makes the person to get fear? Just I want a clarification.
They have not trained their mind. Simply taking medicines, simply leading the life of one, say, uh, with some, without cultivating the mind, without developing the mind, nobody can achieve equanimity. So that is the reason why we are doing a lot of work, like meditation, like wholesome actions, like all these things. Why we are doing? We also remain like indulging in some worldly things. We also remain like your patients, not being equanimous, not being non-reactive. It's a training, just like any other training, just like any other skill that you are going to learn. This is also a training. This is also, say, one kind of beautiful skill that one should develop. As our Upasak asking, so observing the sensations in an equanimous way, observing the sounds in an equanimous way, observing the breath also. Many a times we have the deep attachment towards the breath. So if something happens in the breath, in the flow of the breath, and we get shocked, we can't remain equanimous. So all these things we have to consciously train and develop the mind. So without developing the mind, how can you expect among your patients to develop this equanimity? Not at all possible. For everything, training is required. In the same way, for this equanimity also, training is required. So that is the reason why you are learning meditations, you are learning all these wholesome actions, and also every day you are attending practice sessions. Why? This is the reason. By default, human mind is reactive. By default, human mind wants to fall into either excitement or disappointment. It has not realized the beauty of the inner happiness. It has not realized the beauty of the happiness that one can derive through equanimity. That is called ignorance. We are trapped in this ignorance. Loads and loads of ignorance, which is not, which is making us not to realize the beauty, the subtlety, the superiority of this inner happiness that one can derive by establishing in this equanimity, that we have not realized. It will not be, say, obtained. It will not be learned in your textbooks, in your medical books, or in your, say, engineering books, or in any education system. You can't learn this. You have to learn this by studying your own mind, not by studying any other external damn things. You should learn how to study your own mind. You should understand your own mind, and with proper guidance, work on your own mind, how to derive this inner happiness, which is nothing but the happiness of equanimity. Then only one can remain equanimous at all situations, whether it is severe health issue, severe financial issue, severe ego issue, in all these severe ups and downs of the life. If your mind is uh, cultivated properly, you can remain equanimous. If it is not cultivated properly, then you will fall into depressions, fall into disappointment, fall into a lot of psychological diseases. Most of the psychological diseases are because of this kind of imbalance in the mind, this kind of wobbling in the mind, this kind of uncontrolledness in the mind, where the people have not learned how to keep the mind in a balanced way, in an equanimous way. Most of the mental health issues, the whole world is, say, bothered about the mental health. But nobody is training the minds to establish this equanimity in the mind. And without establishing equanimity, how can you expect mental health in the world? So don't think that by learning, by taking degrees, MEA, PhD, we can establish equanimity in the mind. No, it has to observe one's own mind, work on one's own mind through these different meditations, through these skillful training techniques. Then only you can establish equanimity. In Madanapalli, I was telling you in one of the batches, the parents, they were very well educated, some professors, IIT trainers. I did some programs in their institutions also in Madanapalli, in southern Andhra Pradesh. They killed their daughters because of this mental health problem only. They have some delusions, some hallucinations going on in their mind. By killing their daughters, there is some nonsense. They are the representatives of the divine, and they can come back with all these hallucinations, with all these deluded ideas, without having equanimity in the mind. They killed their daughters. They are very rich, very educated, very, very intelligent, very influential people in that city. But still, because of this deluded, imbalanced mind, which is carried away in some kind of wrong beliefs, not in this right belief of this balance in the mind, developing the awareness of the mind. Don't have this right belief in this mind development. They have some belief in some nonsense theistic ideas. I don't say that all theistic ideas are absolutely nonsense, but they were having some very, very corrupted theistic ideas. And they used to, I am Shiva. She used to talk like one gone case, some mad person. So all these deluded ideas which lead to the imbalance in the mind. So that lead to this kind of horrible, unwholesome actions like killing their own children, girls, 20, 25 years old girls. They are also very highly educated. One was pursuing civils and she passed some civils exam also, and she was some assistant, something like that, and other girl also. This is all because of the imbalance in the mind. It's not your education that will help you to balance your mind. It's not your information, lot of storage of information in your mind about the world that will help you. You have to learn all these simple tips. You have to develop the faith in this path where the mind gets stability and equanimity. Step by step, develop a little bit of generosity after this faith, develop a little bit of morality, develop this meditation practice daily, at least for half an hour or 1 hour. That way, step by step, drop by drop, keep on working on this. Then only you can establish in equanimity. Not simply by, oh, you should learn how to be equanimous, but you're not simply giving sermons. It will not have an impact on the mind. The mind should taste that beauty of that inner happiness, the happiness of equanimity. Until then, the mind will fall into these extremes of excitement and disappointment. Once the mind realizes or tastes the beauty of this happiness of equanimity, then nobody can stop that mind to work on that. Okay, so that is the answer to your question. So you can't simply be equanimous, tolerate, be patient in that way. If you say nobody can develop that patience and equanimity, one should say first learn and practice how to establish that equanimity in one's own mind. Then you can ask other people to work on those skillful techniques. Then only they can taste that beauty of that happiness of equanimity. Then only they can progress in that path. Okay, next question, Anirudh.
Pranam Banteji.
Sadhu Sadhu.
Actually, my question is related to equanimity only. The thing is, like when we end the meditation, like generally what happens is you instruct us to observe 10 breaths and then observe the last 10 breaths and end your meditation. So what happens is I mean, that time do we have to take care of our thoughts as well, because a random thought will pop up and then sort
be
of
louder, be little louder.
Is it okay now?
Yeah.
So when we are ending a meditation, should we have specific thoughts, or we should just keep it free? Because what happens is sometimes a random thought will pop up when we are ending a meditation, and it might at times be too random. So should we take care of what we are observing as thought as well?
Actually, all these preparatory meditations, like the wholesome feelings and the other awareness meditations, like sound meditation, sensation meditation, light meditation, All this preparatory meditation should take care of your thoughts, and they will take care of the thoughts. Then only you can start observing the subtle breaths, the refined breaths, which requires more stillness of the mind, more purity of the mind. Once you achieve that superior stillness, superior purity of the mind by practicing all these meditations, then your mind is ready to observe the breaths, the whole breaths. That means even the very subtle thoughts, subtle emotions, also you can keep away. So if there are some disturbing thoughts at the time of observing the breaths, then what you should do, you go back to the previous meditations, observe the sensations, observe the light, observe the sounds. That is also difficult because of these, say, compulsive thoughts or disturbing thoughts. Then you practice wholesome feelings, because the disturbing thoughts are, when the feelings are not wholesome, then there will be more of disturbing thoughts. Unwholesome thoughts. Unwholesome thoughts only, they are compulsive thoughts, they are obsessive thoughts. Once you practice wholesome thoughts like metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha, then a lot of unwholesome thoughts will go away, a lot of disturbance will go away. Then by practicing sound awareness, sensation awareness, and light awareness, again, many of the disturbing thoughts, the remaining disturbing thoughts, they can be fixed, they can go away. So with that preparation, start observing the breaths, because breath requires a superior mind. Observing the breath requires a more still mind, a more pure mind. So if you can't establish that superior mind, pure mind, to observe the breaths correctly, fully, then better to go back to the previous meditations. Just like I used to give an example of this driving. The top gear, if you can't control your vehicle, then you have to go back to the previous gear, is it not? Fourth gear, third gear, you have to go back. In the same way, in the top gear, that is observing the breaths, if it is difficult to control the mind, the kind of the wavering thoughts, then you should go back to the previous meditations, light meditation, sensation meditation, sound meditation, wholesome feelings. Get some control, then come back to this top gear. Okay.
Thank you, Banteji.
Sadhu. Upasak?
Okay, Vandami Banteji, Nagananda here.
Yes, Nagananda.
Banteji, like as you were telling, like Sir was also asking previously.
Sorry?
When unwholesome thoughts are coming because of anger or hatred and all,
Hmm.
you can recognize it is coming inside of me.
Hmm.
But when it is motivated by fear, you will be feeling there are unknown external factors that are influencing. So sometimes you don't know how to control that agitation. Whereas anger and hatred, you can sometimes recognize it's coming from me and you can try to silence it. And of course, teaching practices and you are practicing and doing that. As far as fear is concerned, there are external factors which are influencing. We don't know what it will do. That is what keeps the agitation. So how to handle that, Manteji?
The don't know itself is ignorance. Because of ignorance only this fear comes, which is from the external factors. So for the time being, let it be. You have, because our minds are not so sophisticated, not so sharp, not so intelligent to find out the external, the fears which come from the external sources. So at that time, what you have to say, what is the most skillful training, skillful way of fixing that fear is to say, let go. So all those things, external things that are creating fear in me, for this time being, for this 15 minutes, for this 45 minutes, let it be, let go. I just keep away all those thoughts about the world. External things means world. Let the world go. That's what is the first instruction usually I give in the beginning of the meditation. Because all our fears, all our anger, all our hatred, all our greed, it is the reaction to the external world only. When you keep away the external world, a lot of our reactions here, the anger, or greed, or ignorance, or delusion, it will come down, it will subside, it will reduce. So that's the reason why when you practice meditation, you have to let go the world for 30 minutes or 45 minutes, whatever you have decided regarding the duration of your sitting meditation. So just let go the world for these 45 minutes. Of course, absolutely letting go the world is difficult, but that should be your conviction. Then only you can protect yourself from the flood of the external thoughts, from the thought, from this flow of thoughts which come from the external world. let me work on whatever thoughts that are there at this juncture. Let me keep away the external thoughts as much as possible. With that conviction, one has to start one's meditation. Then start working on these wholesome feelings. Then a lot of external thoughts, they can be cut, they can be controlled, they can be reduced. And again, when you start working on awareness meditations, much more refinement will happen, much more filtering will happen. Very, very subtle thoughts will start arising. When you come to the last meditation, that is Anapana. Then if you keep on working on Anapana, even those very subtle thoughts also will disappear. Then you get deep absorption, where you are free from almost all thoughts. Completely plunge into your own mind sense. So the key here is your ability to let go. Your ability to let go the external world. Higher is the ability, then higher will be your superiority or sharpness or say stilling of mind on your meditation object. So whatever may be the say the consequence, because of consequences only the fears come. I'm least bothered about the consequences. At this juncture, I will give my best 100% to the present action. So if that attitude if you develop, then definitely the fears that will arise, the thoughts of fear which will arise because of the external influences, you can keep away. If you're not bothered about the consequences, you're simply bothered about how best I can give to this present moment. Karma, how best I can give to my actions. With that attitude, if you develop, then slowly, of course, it's not possible in overnight. So regular meditation practice sessions and regular this understanding of the Dhamma, it should keep on bombard your mind. Then only that old habit pattern of reacting to the external world and getting scared, getting affected, that old habit pattern will go. For that, you have to start this new habit pattern of establishing in equanimity, establishing in this mental training mind culture. Then only you can come out of these thoughts that that will make you more fearful external thoughts.
Thank you, Bante.
Sorry. Okay, we'll conclude. We'll conclude with one small chanting.
Bante, I have a small question. What is the
Yes,
name of
what's
the
your name,
sutta?
Mama?
Purnima.
Purnima. Yes.
Bante, what is the name of the sutta that you taught us today from the Majjhima Nikaya? I tried to trace it, but I couldn't. So,
It is Majjhima Nikaya Sutta number 21.
yeah, but which?
You can just see
chapter?
in any Majjhima Nikaya book, you will get it.
Okay, okay, Bante. Okay, Bante.
Oh, okay. Any other question from anybody? No. Okay, we'll conclude with one chanting. Namo tassa bhagavato arhato samma sambuddhassa bhavatu sabba mangalam rakkantu sabba devata sabba buddhanubhavena sabba dhammanubhavena sabba sanghanubhavena sada soti bhavantu te sukhi bhave yang nidduko ahang nicca ahang viya idacha me sukhi hontu majjata chatavedino imam hi gammante dhamme sattahontu sukhi sada tato parancarajyesu chakkavale sujantano sadhu 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 sukhi rahe मंगल
वंदना बंते
sadhu sadhu
थैंक यू बंते जी
sadhu
Thank you so much, Bante ji.
वंदना बंते
वंदना बंते जी
वंदना मी बनते थैंक यू
वंदना बंते जी